Olá, bem-vindos ao Cinemarden e o programa de hoje é bem especial. Meu convidado é o cineasta Mark Cousin. A partir de agora eu vou conversar com ele em inglês, mas tudo estará devidamente legendado. How are you, Mark? Welcome to Cinemarden.
I'm very good, Martin. Thank you for inviting me.
So, we're going to talk about one of your favorite films. What is this film?
The film is called The Ascent. It was made in 1976 and it's directed by a great Ukrainian filmmaker called Larisa Shepitko.
Yes, I read something about this filmmaker. Unfortunately, she died very young in a car accident. She made only 5 films, right? And The Ascent, it was the last one of it. When did you see it for the first time?
I think I saw it about 15 years ago. Way back in the 1990s, I started to try and inform myself about the great female filmmakers. And one part of the world kept coming up, the old Soviet Union or Soviet Empire, if you want to call it like that. A high proportion of the great female directors came from that part of the world. And so I saw her film Wings first, and then The Ascent. And I just thought it was one of the greatest war movies ever made. I find it unforgettable. I never met her, but I know people who knew her, and she was a dazzlingly brilliant person. I think red hair, vibrant, uh, daring, courageous, original, and all these qualities of the courage and originality are in the film itself.
And she was mentioned on your series Women Make Film, right?
Yes.
And that was the first time I heard about her. I've never heard about her.
Okay.
So, and that's one of the great things I myself think about the work you do. Because since you are a very curious person, you always are looking for something. I mean, you curious, you travel all over the world. You
Yeah.
you are not shy of finding new things and new films and
No.
new filmmakers. And many filmmakers I've never heard of, I've seen it for the first time because of your work. And so
Oh,
thank you.
well, thank you. I'm so grateful. I think that for me, I feel that my ignorance is my best friend. What I don't know keeps me alive. I know quite a lot, but there's much more that I don't know, and so it keeps me enthusiastic and passionate to discover people, and when you first discover Larissa Shepitko, you see any of her films, and then you kind of fall in love with her and her worldview and the dynamism of her filmmaking. She's got this kind of incredible baroque energy that a filmmaker like Orson Welles has, for example. And you think, wow. And of course, it's okay to be a bit angry as well, that she's not better known. You and I are middle-aged men, and we're talking about this woman who died aged 38, one of the world's greatest filmmakers, and yet still not well enough known.
Yes, and about the Ascent, I don't know if you're going to agree with me, but when I saw it, it seemed to me that the film is divided in two parts, two very specific parts, because you
Mm,
have those two soldiers that leave the group to find food for them.
yeah.
And in the first half hour or a little bit more, almost an hour, the first hour of the film, we see them fighting against nature. And the second part, they are fighting against other people and themselves.
Yes, I think
Sort
so. In the
of
second,
two
yeah,
very specific conflicts.
I think so. I mean, it becomes quite spiritual in the second half. As you know, it's set in Belarus in 1942, and the Nazis are pushing eastwards. And these two central figures that you mentioned are partisans. They're fighting the Nazis, and we see them. We see them in the most appalling conditions. The film was shot sometimes -40 degrees, so we can see the incredible coldness and the difficulty. So yes, you're right, it's two types of fight. The first one is a kind of more, like a more standard warrior fight, and the second, I think, becomes more internal in a way. It becomes quite, I think the film becomes quite Christ-like, quite Christian. Would you agree, towards the
Yes,
end?
yes.
Very metaphysical. And I think she herself, Larissa herself, was unwell for some of her life. She was hospitalized with a mental health issue. And so I think that kind of the struggle, the personal struggle within a person, um, was important to her. She really felt it deeply. And, this film's one of it must have been so difficult to make.
I think so. And I think I had a feeling watching the film that reminded another one, a film made here in Brazil that I think you've seen it, The Case of the Spider Woman by Hector
Of course,
Babenco.
of course.
The two soldiers, Brayback and Sotnikov,
Yes.
they reminded me the two prisoners we've seen in Case of the Spider Woman,
Oh,
because
that's
we have Valentin, made by Raul Julia, who is
yes,
the fighter, the strong one,
yes,
and
yes,
the other one, played by William Hurt. It's
yes,
soft, the dreamer, and everything,
yes.
as we see in these two soldiers. But in the second half of the film, we see that the one that we thought was a little was really strong and positive
Yes.
and a fighter, it's not the one we thought he
Hmm.
was. And the other one that got shot, it's sick and everything. He transcends as a fully human being. I don't know if I'm being clear or if my comparison is it's correct, but they remind me the two prisoners from Kiss of the Spider Woman.
It's funny, I would not have thought of Hector Babenco's film, but I think you're right. I particularly agree with your use of the word transcend, because this is a film where that when Sotnikov, one of the two soldiers, gets shot, you know, he he's a more gentle character, as you say. But he finds this incredible inner strength, I think, to stand up against the interrogation. He's treated very, very badly by the Nazis or their collaborators in Belarus, and it becomes a film about inner strength. And where does that come from? And where does one's inner strength come from? And it's fascinating. I was brought up in Belfast in Northern Ireland during the war, and I was in Sarajevo during the siege. So I've been in places where you just feel that you have to say to yourself, be strong, be strong. This is scary, but be strong. And I think this director, is really brilliant at that idea of inner strength.
And Larissa, I've seen two films that she directed. I'm going to watch the other ones. I've seen the first one, Hit, and the
Yes,
last one, The Ascent. And she likes to make close-ups most of
very
the time
yes,
with the
yes.
characters in their faces and some particular situations. I mean, in the Ascent, we see the faces of the soldiers, we see the faces of the partisan around, that woman from the farm, the old man, that boy during the execution. We saw he is crying, and you told us about the Christian feeling that the film has. Rybak is called Judas because of what he does.
Yeah, I think I think that when you think back on the history of cinema, what are the great films of close-ups? And the one that we might say most is The Passion of Joan of Arc. That incredible film starring Falconetti. And I would say The Ascent of Shapiko is close to that in terms of the use of the human face.
I agree.
Brilliant casting. Most of these actors had not been in films before. The guy who played Sotnikov, the main character, Boris Plotnikov, he had never been in a film before. And his incredible beauty, she was very interested in male beauty, but also, the aging face, the complex face. I don't know if she had studied painting, but I feel that you can see in this picture Italian painting, the great Renaissance painters like Masaccio, Giotto, Caravaggio. I think we can see that use of the human face in this film. I think it's as great as that in a way, that sense of the close up.
And she's never manipulative. I mean, you see the characters are well constructed, and then as you follow the story, you understand why they do what they do.
Yeah.
But there is no music in the back to make you feel sad or anything like that. The strength of the story is in the storytelling itself. I mean, the mise en scène and everything else. I mean, without any kind of help.
Well, I think there's the physicality of it. They did shoot in appalling conditions, and those actors, at one point in the first half of the film, the actors look as if they might die. You can see the ice on their beard and their eyelashes, and that isn't makeup. That's real ice. They were working in those incredible, difficult circumstances, and Shapiko herself apparently didn't wear warmer clothes than the actors, so they were putting them through it. And I have to say, there is music, as you know, there is music. There's a great score by Alfred Schnittke, and that ending that you referred to, like this kind of transcendent, appalling endings. I think one of the great endings in cinema, one of the most moving
Yes, but
endings in the whole history of cinema, where Schnitzke's score, his music sounds like a horror movie. It sounds like a kind of roaring of a beast, kind of the belly of a whale. It feels like not cinema music in some way, So I think that she was thinking in such a profound way about human, the human loss of World War II. And you remember she was born in 1938.
mhm.
So she remembered World War II. Her father left, and she didn't really know her father very well, but she was 7 by the end of World War II. And I think this young girl was profoundly affected by the sense, it's very moving to think of that, by the sense that the world could end. It could almost end, and you've got this utter tragedy and seriousness in the sublime towards the end sequence where the main character is hung. Totally, people, listening to this, watching this, if they go and see this film, brace yourself because it's profoundly sad, tragic, magnificent.
But what I meant about the music is that it's not an intrusive music.
No, 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 no,
It,
no.
it's well integrated to the narrative, and
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 and and the world, there is not a when you think about this film, there isn't a lot of story. I'm always suspicious of films that have got too much story. Not a lot happens.
yes.
It's quite often just like a series of encounters with a village or a house or a tragedy or a huge human challenge. So the music and the landscape and the snow and the forest and the clothes and everything are just so incredibly physically brilliant. That kind of physical aspect of cinema which there's no getting away from. I think it's in terms of, we should mention that her husband was a great filmmaker, Ilham Klimov, and he made one of the best war films come and see. So between the two of them, the husband and wife made, I think, the two best war films ever made. And
Yes.
his film is super, super physical as well. You just feel your body in this film very, very much.
Yes, and the word we used in the beginning of our conversation, transcendent, can be perfectly applied to this film because that's the feeling I had by the end of it. Those people standing with the rope on their necks
Yeah, yeah.
and the faces that is shown for us, and the last time we see them, and she's very subtle in everything. It's nothing explicit, but that's because it's so powerful, because you don't see it, but of course we imagine the way it happened. And altogether, I still got some my skin
Yeah,
just
yeah. Yeah, I mean and the fact that we see, as you referred to earlier, at the tragic moment when the central character is killed by the Nazis, we something amazing happens, like where his body seems to push the camera back, but we're mostly on the face of a child, and that so there, as you say, it's subtle. We're projecting onto this film, and watching a film, we are oft I'm watching a really good film, we're projecting, I think, and I guarantee anybody who hasn't seen this film, if they watch it tonight or tomorrow, they will remember those faces for the rest of their lives. The faces, the humanity in those faces, like the kind of brink of despair, but also the fortitude of, the survival instinct in this film is extraordinary as well.
Mhm. And if you haven't seen this film, I'm gonna put below in the comments the link of CPC Films that released this film in Brazil. So you'll be able to check it out. You'll be able to watch it or buy it on DVD if you want. And Mark, I just have to thank you very, very much for your time, for this delightful conversation. And if anyone wants to follow you, see your work, where Mark Cousin can be found. Some of your books were released in Brazil, The Story of Film. It was released as well on DVD, not with the next generation part, but the first ones you can find it in Brazil. Many of your works I know that can be seen on YouTube, but I want to know from yourself, what are you doing at the moment, and when can people find you on the web?
I don't know. I mean, I don't have a website, and
I
as
know that.
filmmakers often aren't told where their films are showing. I know my last film was about fascism, and it played in. It got a nice audience award at the Sao Paulo Film Festival, for
Yes.
example. My work, I think, and I've the brilliant It's All True documentary festival in Brazil. I'm a huge fan of what they do. I think it's one of the great film festivals in the world, and I'm lucky enough that they have shown some of my films over the years, including The Story of Looking, which was a film about me, having an eye operation and the risk of not being able to see. So, I'm lucky enough that some of my work has been shown in Brazil, but I never quite know where it is. I'm hoping to be in Brazil quite soon. I've wanted to go forever, so I think in the next year I will eventually be in Brazil because I'm a huge fan of architecture. So I need to get to Brasilia, and I'm a huge fan of music. So I met Caetano Veloso a few times and I would love that. So Brazil has been in my imagination for a long time, but now I will be able to set my foot on the country itself.
I hope so that you'll be able to be here in 2024. It will
I
be
would love
great.
that. I would love
Thank
that.
you very much.
Thanks so much for your time, Martin.
E até o próximo Cinemartem.